Elena had been called many things: rejected mate, cursed woman, worthless omega, but never once had anyone called her a healer. That was why she froze when she opened her cabin door before sunrise and found 6 enormous wolves waiting in complete silence. They were not there to kill her. They were not there to hunt. One by one they stepped aside, and lying in the snow between them was another wolf. His white fur had turned crimson with blood. His breathing was fading. His eyes were already beginning to close. The largest black wolf walked forward until he stood only inches from Elena. Then something happened that no wolf had ever done before. The Alpha King's own royal guardian slowly lowered his head and pushed the dying wolf toward the woman the kingdom had thrown away. Elena shook her head. "You came to the wrong place. I cannot save him. I have never healed anyone." The wolves did not move. They simply waited, as though they already knew something about her that she did not. Miles away inside the royal palace, the Alpha King woke with a violent gasp. His wolf was gone. Not stolen, not captured. It had abandoned its king, and every royal wolf in the palace had disappeared with it before dawn. By the time Kale followed their tracks into the frozen forest, he expected to find an enemy army. Instead, he found every wolf in his kingdom gathered outside the cabin of the woman he had publicly rejected. None of them looked at their alpha. Every pair of eyes was fixed on Elena. Then the dying white wolf opened his eyes, not to look at the king, but to bow his head before the woman who kept whispering the same terrified words. "I am not a healer. So why do the Alpha King's wolves refuse to leave without her?" The first wolf did not howl. He knocked. 3 slow, heavy thuds echoed through the frozen darkness and shook the thin wooden door of Elena Ashmore's cabin. Outside, the wind screamed through the black pine trees, and snow drifted across the clearing like pale ghosts. Elena woke instantly. Her hand reached beneath her pillow and wrapped around the worn hunting knife she kept beside her every night. No one visited this deep and black pine forest unless they wanted something. Usually they wanted her gone. She slipped from her narrow bed and stepped onto the cold wooden floor. Every breath formed a white cloud in the freezing air. Another knock came. Slow, heavy, patient. Not the fist of a man. Something larger. Her heart pounded. The villagers had threatened her before. They had called her cursed, worthless, a woman without a wolf, a rejected mate abandoned by the Alpha King himself. Perhaps they had finally decided to burn her cabin and finish what humiliation had begun. Elena swallowed the fear rising in her throat and slowly pulled the door open. 5 enormous black wolves stood silently beneath the falling snow. Their thick fur was stained with blood. Between them lay a white wolf whose breathing was so weak it barely stirred the snow beneath his muzzle. One of his legs hung at an unnatural angle. Deep claw marks covered his side. None of the wolves growled. None showed their teeth. They simply stared at Elena. Not with hunger. Not with anger. With hope. Elena blinked in disbelief. "You have the wrong cabin," she whispered. Her voice almost disappeared into the wind. "I cannot help you. I am not a healer." The oldest wolf stepped forward. His amber eyes never left hers. Slowly he lowered his head. Then with surprising gentleness, he nudged the dying white wolf until the injured body rested against Elena's boots. The other wolves followed. One after another they lowered themselves onto the snow. They bowed. Elena stood frozen. She had seen wolves attack. She had seen them hunt. She had never seen wolves beg. For a long moment the forest became strangely quiet. Even the wind seemed to stop. Something deep inside Elena stirred. Not magic, not power. Something older. Something she could not explain. Without thinking, she knelt beside the wounded animal. His body trembled beneath her fingertips. His heartbeat was fading. "I truly do not know how to save you," she whispered. "But I cannot leave you here to die." She carried him inside. The black wolves did not enter. They simply waited outside the cabin like silent guardians. Inside the little room, Elena lit every candle she owned. Warm light pushed against the darkness, while snow melted from the wolf's fur onto the wooden floor. She examined his wounds carefully. Deep cuts, broken ribs, fever. Someone had hunted him. She crushed dried herbs into a rough paste and cleaned each wound with warm water. Her hands moved gently, patiently. She had learned these things from caring for injured birds and abandoned deer. Never wolves. The white wolf whimpered once. Elena placed her hand against his neck. Stay with me. Please stay. For reasons she could not understand, the wolf slowly relaxed beneath her touch. Outside, every black wolf lifted its head toward the night sky. Not to howl, to listen. Miles away inside the royal palace, another pair of silver eyes suddenly flew open. Alpha King Kale Draven sat upright in bed. His chest rose sharply. Pain shot through the bond he thought he had destroyed 6 months earlier. Impossible. He had rejected Elena before the entire kingdom. He had broken the mating bond with his own words. His wolf should have forgotten her. Instead, his beast paced wildly inside him. Restless, agitated, demanding to leave. Kale clenched his fists. "What is wrong with you?" he growled beneath his breath. The beast answered with only one feeling. "Find her." Kale forced the voice away. He refused to think about the quiet woman whose eyes had filled with tears while thousands watched their alpha reject his own mate. He had done what duty demanded. The kingdom needed a powerful Luna. Not a woman without a wolf. Not a woman everyone believed was cursed. Yet somehow that memory had never left him. Her face, her silence, the way she had never begged. She had only looked at him with a sadness that haunted him every night since. A loud howl echoed somewhere beyond the palace walls. Then another. Kale walked to the window. The palace wolves were gone. Every single one. Only empty chains remained where the royal guard wolves had slept. His heartbeat quickened. Where had they gone before dawn? Back in the forest, Elena did not sleep. She remained beside the wounded white wolf through the endless winter night. Every few minutes, she changed the bandages. Every few minutes, she whispered gentle words, although she knew wolves could not understand human language. Or perhaps they could. Just before sunrise, the wolf finally opened his pale blue eyes. He looked directly at her. There was no fear, only gratitude. A single tear slipped down Elena's cheek. "You are going to live," she whispered with a tired smile. The wolf slowly licked her hand. Outside, the waiting wolves stood together, almost as though they had been expecting this moment. The white wolf struggled to his feet. His injured legs shook but held his weight. He walked toward the door. Before leaving, he looked back at Elena one final time. Then he lowered his head in a respectful bow. The other wolves copied him. 5 great predators, bowing to the woman every kingdom believed was worthless. Within moments, they disappeared between the snow-covered pines. Elena remained standing in the doorway long after they had vanished. What had just happened? She laughed quietly to herself. Perhaps loneliness had finally stolen her mind. Perhaps winter had become too long. She closed the door and tried to forget the strange visitors. But the next morning they returned, this time with another wounded wolf. The morning after that they came again. Then again. Every dawn. Always before sunrise. Always silent. Always waiting. Soon Elena stopped asking why. She simply opened the door before they knocked. The little cabin slowly transformed into something it had never been. A place where broken creatures found another chance. Word began spreading through the forest without a single human messenger. Foxes lingered near her porch without fear. Injured hawks landed on her roof. Even frightened deer no longer fled when Elena walked nearby. The forest itself seemed to breathe differently around her. Yet inside the royal palace, the mystery only deepened. Hunters reported strange tracks leading toward Black Pine Forest. Scouts whispered that royal wolves vanished every dawn before returning at sunset healthier than before. No one could explain it. No one dared speak the one name that quietly appeared in every rumor. Elena Ashmore. Finally, Kale could ignore it no longer. Wrapped in his black winter cloak, he mounted his horse before sunrise and followed the endless line of wolf tracks disappearing into the frozen forest. Hours later, he reached a snowy ridge overlooking a tiny wooden cabin. He remained hidden among the trees. Below him, Elena stepped outside carrying fresh water. At that exact moment, 6 massive wolves emerged from the forest. One limped badly. Another carried deep bite wounds across its shoulder. Kale expected violence. Instead, every wolf calmly approached the woman he had rejected. Then one by one, they lowered their heads before her. Kale's breath caught in his throat. His own royal wolves, kneeling, not before their alpha, but before Elena. Then his eyes fell upon the largest wolf among them. Around its neck hung a silver collar engraved with the royal crest of House Draven. Kale knew that wolf. It had guarded the palace gates for 8 years, and somehow it had chosen to come here. To her. The impossible truth settled like ice inside his chest. His wolves were keeping a secret from their king. Kale remained hidden among the snow-covered pines long after the wolves disappeared into Elena's cabin. The freezing wind pressed against his face, but he barely noticed it. His attention never left the woman standing in the doorway. She looked exactly as she had on the day he rejected her. Her dark chestnut hair was tied loosely behind her shoulders. Her simple green dress was hidden beneath a worn brown cloak. No jewels, no servants, no pride, only quiet strength. He had expected bitterness. He had expected anger. Instead, she smiled softly as she welcomed another wounded wolf inside, as though caring for broken creatures was the most natural thing in the world. Kale frowned. Nothing about this made sense. His wolves were trained from birth to obey only the Alpha King. Even injured wolves would crawl back toward the palace before seeking help anywhere else. Yet every morning they crossed miles of frozen wilderness to reach a woman who possessed no healing gift. His wolf stirred restlessly inside him. Go to her. The voice was stronger this time. Kale tightened his jaw. No. His beast answered with silence, but the feeling refused to disappear. For the first time in years, Kale felt as though he was no longer completely in control of himself. Below the ridge, Elena carefully washed fresh blood from another wolf's shoulder. She spoke softly while cleaning the wound. That must have hurt a great deal. You are lucky you reached me before the infection spread. The wolf remained perfectly still. When she finished wrapping clean cloth around the injury, the great animal gently rested its head against her shoulder for a brief moment before leaving. Kale had never seen wolves behave this way, not even toward their own mothers. Something far older than trust connected them to Elena. Something instinctive, something impossible. He stayed until sunset. Wolf after wolf arrived. Each one wounded, each one leaving stronger. None harmed her. None even raised its voice. As darkness covered the forest, Kale quietly returned to the palace carrying more questions than answers. Inside the great hall, anxiety had already spread. Servants whispered in corners. Warriors checked weapons that needed no checking. The royal wolf kennels were once again half empty. Beta Rowan walked toward Kale the moment he entered. His expression was serious. We lost 3 border patrols today. Kale removed his cloak. Rogues. Rowan nodded slowly. The survivors said the attackers vanished into the northern mountains before anyone could follow. Kale stared at the large map spread across the table. Every attack had happened near Black Pine Forest. Every attack happened shortly before wolves appeared at Elena's cabin. Coincidence no longer seemed possible. Before Kale could speak, another voice interrupted. Lady Celine entered the hall dressed in elegant white fur that reflected the firelight like fresh snow. She smiled beautifully, but her eyes remained cold. You disappeared without guards this morning. That is unlike you. Kale answered calmly. I wanted to inspect the northern border myself. Did you find anything interesting? Her question sounded casual. Too casual. Kale studied her face. Only abandoned trails. Nothing more. Celine watched him for another long moment before smiling again. Sometimes silence hides more danger than war. She turned gracefully and walked away. Kale continued watching until she disappeared around the stone corridor. Something about her words unsettled him. That night's sleep never came. Each time Kale closed his eyes, he saw Elena kneeling beside wounded wolves. He remembered another image as well. The rejection ceremony. Thousands had gathered beneath the moon temple expecting celebration. Instead, they witnessed humiliation. He remembered Elena standing before him in a plain dress, while nobles whispered cruel jokes behind their hands. No wolf, no healing, no power. The High Elder had announced her as his fated mate. Kale had looked into her hopeful eyes. Then he had spoken the words that shattered both their futures. I reject you before the moon goddess and before every pack. The crowd had erupted. Some laughed. Others pitied her. Elena never cried. She simply lowered her head and walked away alone. Even then his wolf had howled in agony. He had ignored it. Now 6 months later that pain had returned stronger than ever. Before dawn another strange feeling dragged Kale from bed. His wolf was already awake. Waiting. Go now. Find her. This time Kale stopped resisting. He saddled his fastest horse and rode toward Black Pine Forest before sunrise. The journey felt strangely familiar, almost as though something invisible guided him. Snow crunched beneath the horse's hooves. Cold mist drifted through the endless pine trees. Then he heard voices. Human voices. Cale quickly dismounted and moved silently through the forest. 3 hunters stood near Elena's cabin. Their faces were twisted with anger. One kicked over the basket of herbs beside her door. Another pointed toward the cabin. That cursed woman has brought wolves closer to our homes. Children cannot even gather firewood anymore. The oldest hunter spat into the snow. We warned her to leave. Today we burn the cabin. Cale's muscles tensed. Before he stepped forward, the cabin door slowly opened. Elena walked outside, carrying nothing except a bucket of water. She looked at the ruined herbs without speaking. Then she looked at the men. I have done nothing against you. One hunter laughed harshly. Everything bad that happens began after your rejection. Even the wolves follow you now. You are bringing darkness into this forest. Elena answered quietly. The wolves come because they are hurt, not because I call them. Liar. The youngest hunter grabbed a burning torch and marched toward the cabin wall. Suddenly a deep growl rolled across the clearing. Every man froze. Massive black wolves emerged from the trees one after another. Not 5, not 6, more than 20. They surrounded Elena without touching her. The hunters stumbled backward. Fear replaced their anger. The largest wolf stepped between Elena and the burning torch. His silver collar flashed beneath the morning light. The royal crest. Cale recognized him instantly. The hunter holding the torch dropped it into the snow. Nobody moved. The silence felt heavier than thunder. Then something even stranger happened. Elena gently placed her hand against the great wolf's neck. You do not need to frighten them. Please, go back. The enormous wolf looked directly into her eyes, then obeyed. One by one, every wolf turned and disappeared into the forest without attacking anyone. The hunters stared in disbelief. None dared speak another word. They collected their belongings and fled. Cale remained hidden behind the trees. His heart beat harder than it had during any battle. Those wolves had ignored fear, ignored instinct, ignored the chance to kill. Because Elena had asked them to leave, no alpha possessed that kind of command. Not even him. As Elena bent down to gather her scattered herbs, she suddenly stopped moving. She looked toward the trees, toward the exact place where Cale stood hidden. For one terrifying second, he believed she had seen him. Their eyes almost met through the branches. Then a cold breeze carried another scent across the clearing. Blood. Fresh blood. One of the wolves returned from the forest alone. He staggered forward before collapsing only a few steps from Elena's feet. His breathing was shallow. An arrow pierced deep through his side. The shaft had been carved with an unfamiliar black symbol. Elena rushed toward him without hesitation. Cale stepped forward instinctively. Then he froze. Someone else was watching the cabin. Far beyond the clearing, a dark, hooded figure stood between the distant trees. The stranger did not move, did not speak, only watched Elena with terrifying patience. Then the figure slowly disappeared into the falling snow, leaving behind only one question that sent a chill through Cale's entire body. Who had started hunting the wolves that trusted Elena most? The wounded wolf collapsed so hard that the snow beneath him turned crimson in an instant. His chest rose, once then again, then struggled to move at all. Elena dropped beside him before fear had time to reach her mind. The broken arrow buried deep inside his side trembled with every shallow breath. Blood soaked through his thick black fur and spread across the frozen ground. Easy, she whispered. You are safe now. She gently pressed both hands around the wound to slow the bleeding. The wolf let out a weak cry, but never once tried to bite her. His tired eyes searched her face, as though he had already placed his life in her hands. Cale remained hidden among the trees. Every instinct told him to step forward. Every lesson he had learned as Alpha demanded that he protect one of his own wolves. Yet something deeper stopped him. If he revealed himself now, Elena would remember only one thing: the man who had broken her heart. So he stayed in the shadows while watching every movement she made. Elena looked carefully at the arrow. The wood was black instead of brown. Tiny marks had been carved into its surface. They were not letters, not decorations. They looked like twisted claws wrapped around a broken moon. She had never seen such a symbol before. Who did this to you? She whispered. The wolf closed his eyes. She snapped the shaft carefully and carried the heavy animal into the cabin. His body was almost too large for her to lift, but somehow she found the strength. As soon as the door closed, the forest became silent again. Kale slowly stepped into the clearing. The broken half of the arrow still lay in the snow. He picked it up. The moment his fingers touched the strange carving, his expression changed. He had seen that mark once before. Years ago. Hidden inside forgotten war records locked beneath the royal library. The Black Fang. An order of assassins that had disappeared almost 2 decades earlier after every member was believed dead. His heartbeat slowed. If the Black Fang had truly returned, then someone powerful had brought them back. Someone inside the kingdom. Inside the palace. The thoughts settled heavily inside his chest. He quickly hid the broken arrow beneath his cloak. No one else could see this. Not yet. Inside the cabin, Elena worked without stopping. She cleaned the wound with warm water. She mixed herbs with crushed pine resin. She stitched torn flesh using strong thread she had made herself during winter. Hours passed. The wolf refused to leave. Instead, he rested quietly beside the fire while Elena prepared fresh bandages. When she finally sat down, exhaustion spread through her body. She closed her eyes for only a moment. A soft scratching sound came from outside. She opened the door, expecting another injured wolf. Instead, she found something else. 3 white feathers rested neatly upon her doorstep. There were no birds nearby. No footprints. Only the feathers. She picked them up slowly. Each feather was perfectly clean despite the falling snow. She had no idea why, but they filled her with an uneasy feeling. Without realizing it, she tucked them inside her cloak. Far away inside the palace, Beta, Rowan, waited in Kale's private chamber. The Alpha entered without removing his cloak. Rowan immediately noticed the dark expression on his face. "You found something." Kale placed the broken arrow upon the table. Rowan stared silently. Then all color drained from his face. "That cannot be real." "I hoped you would say that." Rowan picked it up carefully. "The Black Fang. I thought they vanished after the Moon War." "So did I." Silence settled between them. Finally, Rowan looked directly at Kale. "Where did you find it?" "Near Black Pine Forest." "Near Elena." Rowan looked away. His reaction lasted only a second, but Kale noticed it. "You know something." The Beta remained quiet. Kale stepped closer. "Rowan, tell me." The older warrior breathed slowly before speaking. "Some secrets survive because revealing them destroys kingdoms." Kale's voice hardened. "I am your king." Rowan lowered his head. "And that is exactly why I cannot answer." "Not yet." Kale had known Rowan since childhood. Never once had his Beta refused a direct order. Until now. The silence between them suddenly felt heavier than armor. Before Kale could press further, a palace guard burst into the chamber. "Alpha, another patrol has been found. Dead." Every warrior rushed toward the northern gates. Beyond the frozen river, 7 wolves lay motionless across the snow. None had been eaten. None had been robbed. Each body had been carefully arranged in a perfect circle. Every wolf carried the same carved symbol burned into its fur. The Black Fang mark. Kale slowly knelt beside the oldest wolf. His jaw tightened. This one had visited Elena's cabin only 2 mornings ago. He remembered the scar above its eye. The wolf she had saved. Someone had hunted every animal she healed. Not for food. Not for revenge. To send a message. That realization chilled him more deeply than the winter air ever could. By sunset, the news reached every village. Fear spread faster than fire. Some blamed rogues. Others blamed dark magic. Many blamed Elena, the cursed woman, the wolf whisperer, the bringer of death. Whispers became accusations. Accusations became anger. Deep inside Black Pine Forest, Elena knew nothing about the rumors. She buried herself in work. The wounded wolf finally stood again, though his movements remained slow. She smiled softly. "You are stronger today." He gently nudged her shoulder, then walked toward the door. Before disappearing into the forest, he stopped. He looked back once, then let out a long, low howl. The sound echoed through the mountains. Seconds later, another howl answered. Then another. Then dozens more. The entire forest seemed alive. Elena stepped outside. Black wolves emerged from every direction. Not attacking. Not hunting. Watching. Waiting. The sight stole her breath. "What do you all want from me?" No answer came. Only silence. Then every wolf turned toward the northern mountains at exactly the same moment. Their ears stood high. Their bodies became tense. Something was coming. A loud crack echoed through the forest. An arrow slammed into the cabin wall, only inches from Elena's head. The wolves exploded into motion. Growls thundered across the clearing. Another arrow flew from the trees. Then another. Elena threw herself behind a stack of firewood as wolves charged into the darkness. Snow burst beneath powerful paws. Branches snapped. Roars echoed through the forest. Steel clashed against claws. Human voices shouted in pain. Then everything became strangely quiet. Too quiet. Elena slowly stood. The wolves returned one by one. Several carried fresh wounds. One never returned at all. The clearing smelled of blood, but there were no human bodies, no attackers. Only one thing remained behind. A black cloak torn on a broken branch. Inside its pocket, Elena discovered a small piece of folded leather. She carefully opened it. A map. Most of the kingdom had been drawn in faded ink. One location had been circled again and again. Her cabin. Beneath the circle someone had written only 4 words. Bring her alive. Elena felt the warmth leave her face. This was never about the wolves. Someone was hunting her. Before she could think, another sound drifted through the silent forest. It was not a howl, not a scream. It was the cry of a newborn baby. Soft, weak, somewhere beyond the snow-covered trees. Elena looked toward the dark forest, while every wolf around her suddenly became completely still. Then together they turned toward the sound, as though they already knew exactly what waited there. The cry came again. It was so small that the wind almost carried it away. Yet every wolf in the clearing heard it. Their ears lifted together. Their bodies became still as stone. Even the falling snow seemed to pause between the silent trees. Elena pressed the folded map inside her cloak and looked toward the northern forest. A baby, out here, in the middle of winter. No child could survive even a few minutes in this cold. Without stopping to think, she grabbed a thick wool blanket from inside the cabin and ran toward the sound. The wolves moved with her. They did not run ahead. They stayed around her in a wide circle as though protecting every step she took. The crying grew louder, then softer, then louder again. The sound led them deeper into black pine forest where ancient pines blocked the morning light. Snow-covered broken stone paths that had disappeared long before Elena was born. She had lived near these woods for months, but had never walked this far. The air felt different here. Older, heavy with forgotten memories. Soon the trees opened into a hidden clearing. At its center stood an ancient stone shrine almost completely buried beneath snow and ice. Time had broken its walls, and vines wrapped around weathered carvings of wolves bowing beneath a full moon. The baby's cries came from behind the shrine. Elena hurried forward. There, beneath a thick layer of white blankets, lay a tiny infant. The child's cheeks were red from the freezing air. Small trembling hands reached helplessly toward the sky. Snowflakes rested across the blanket, but somehow none touched the baby's face. Elena dropped to her knees. "Oh, little one, who left you here?" She wrapped the child against her chest and covered the tiny body with her cloak. The crying slowly faded until only soft breaths remained. One of the black wolves approached quietly. Instead of sniffing the child, he lowered his head. Then every wolf around the shrine did exactly the same. They bowed, not to Elena, to the baby. A chill traveled through Elena's body. She looked down. The blanket had slipped slightly away from the infant's tiny shoulder. There, just beneath the soft skin, rested a birthmark. A silver crescent moon, surrounded by the shape of a wolf. Beautiful. Perfect. Unlike anything Elena had ever seen. Before she could study it further, a deep voice echoed through the clearing. "Cover the mark." Immediately, Elena spun around. An old man stepped from between the snow-covered trees. His long gray cloak blended almost perfectly with the winter forest. Thick white hair reached his shoulders. His walking staff left deep marks in the snow with every step. The wolves did not attack him. Instead, they moved aside, allowing him to pass. "Who are you?" Elena asked. The old man stopped a few steps away. His tired eyes rested first on the child, then on Elena. Finally, he smiled with quiet sadness. "My name is Magnus. I have been searching for both of you for longer than you can imagine." Elena instinctively tightened her hold on the baby. "If you came for this child, then you are too late. I will not hand her over." Magnus slowly shook his head. "If I wanted to take her, I would not have come alone." He looked toward the wolves. Neither would they allow it. Elena remained silent. The old man stepped closer. That child is in terrible danger. So are you. Elena remembered the map hidden inside her cloak. Someone is hunting me. Magnus nodded. Yes, because they finally know where you are. Those words settled heavily inside her heart. What do you mean? The old man's face became grave. The people hunting you are not simple killers. They serve someone who has waited 24 years for this moment. Before Elena could ask another question, the baby suddenly reached out with one tiny hand. Her fingers touched Elena's wrist. A strange warmth spread through Elena's arm. Not painful, comforting. For one brief moment, flashes appeared inside her mind. A great stone palace, moonlight pouring through stained glass windows. A woman with gentle gray-blue eyes smiling while holding a newborn baby. Then screams. Fire, blood covering white marble floors. A man carrying an infant through secret tunnels. Wolves howling in grief. The vision disappeared as quickly as it had come. Elena gasped. What was that? Magnus looked at her carefully. You saw something. Did you not? She nodded slowly. I saw a palace, a baby, someone running. The old man's eyes filled with emotion. The memories are waking. Elena frowned. Memories? They cannot be mine. I have never been inside any palace. Magnus looked toward the ancient shrine before answering. Sometimes the heart remembers what the mind was forced to forget. The words left more questions than answers. Before Elena could speak again, one of the wolves suddenly growled. Lo! Dangerous! Every wolf lifted its head. Magnus turned sharply toward the forest. They found us. From beyond the trees came the sound of boots crushing fresh snow. Many boots. Not hunters. Soldiers. Magnus grabbed Elena's arm. Listen carefully. Take the child and follow the wolves. Do not stop. Do not look back. Who are they? Magnus answered without hesitation. People who cannot allow that little girl to live. The first soldiers burst through the trees carrying silver spears. Royal soldiers. Elena's eyes widened. Why would the palace want a baby? Then she saw the woman leading them. Lady Selene. Even dressed in white fur, she carried herself like a queen already wearing an invisible crown. Her beautiful smile never reached her cold eyes. She stopped across the clearing. Well, after all these years, we finally meet properly. Elena instinctively stepped backward. Selene looked at the baby and laughed softly. You always did have terrible luck. First the girl, now the child. Magnus stepped between them. You should have stayed dead with your lies. Selene's smile vanished. Old men should learn when to remain silent. She raised one elegant hand. The soldiers lowered their spears. Kill the old man. Bring me the baby. Alive. The clearing exploded into chaos. The wolves charged with deafening roars. Soldiers rushed forward. Snow flew through the air. Steel clashed against teeth. Elena clutched the infant tightly and ran exactly where the wolves opened a path for her. Behind her, she heard Magnus shouting ancient words she could not understand. The ground itself seemed to tremble beneath the shrine. She did not stop. She could not. Branches whipped against her face as she raced through the forest. The baby's tiny heartbeat pressed against her chest. Then a powerful hand suddenly grabbed her shoulder from behind. Elena spun in terror, ready to fight. Instead, she found herself staring into familiar silver eyes. Kale! He had arrived too late to stop the attack, but just in time to see Lady Selene standing beside royal soldiers while ordering the murder of an innocent child. For the first time since becoming Alpha King, Kale looked at the woman he had trusted for years and realized he might never have truly known her at all. Far behind them, the battle still raged through the ancient forest, and Magnus' final desperate cry echoed across the snow. Magnus' cry echoed through the forest long after Elena and Kale stopped running. It was not the cry of a frightened old man. It carried the weight of someone who knew he was sacrificing everything to protect a promise made many years before. The sound faded into the snow-covered mountains until only the whisper of the wind remained. Elena held the baby tightly against her chest. Her heart pounded so hard she could barely breathe. Little Lyra had stopped crying. The tiny girl slept peacefully despite the chaos surrounding her, as though she trusted the arms that carried her more than the world itself. Kale looked back toward the distant trees, where smoke slowly rose into the pale morning sky. Magnus, stay behind to buy us time, he said quietly. Elena looked at him with eyes full of anger. You knew they were coming. Cale lowered his head. I suspected someone was hunting you. I did not know the royal soldiers were involved. She stared at him. Or perhaps you simply did not want to know. The words struck deeper than any blade. Cale remained silent. There was no excuse he could offer. Not after everything he had already taken from her. A low howl interrupted the silence. 3 black wolves appeared from the trees and stopped before them. The oldest carried blood across his shoulder but stood proudly despite the wound. He looked toward the eastern mountains before glancing back at Elena. He was leading them somewhere. Elena noticed it immediately. They want us to follow. Cale nodded. Then we follow. The journey lasted until sunset. The wolves guided them across frozen rivers and narrow mountain trails hidden beneath heavy snow. No ordinary traveler could have found the path. Several times Cale noticed fresh footprints behind them, only to watch the wolves quietly erase every trace before moving on. Someone was still following. Someone patient. Someone dangerous. As darkness settled over the mountains, the wolves stopped before what appeared to be nothing more than a solid wall of stone. Elena frowned. There is no path. The oldest wolf stepped forward and pushed his body against a thick curtain of frozen vines. The vines slowly shifted aside. A narrow passage appeared behind them. Cold air drifted from the darkness beyond. Cale lit a small torch. The hidden tunnel stretched deep beneath the mountain. Ancient carvings covered every wall. Hundreds of wolves, kings, queens, children. Every figure knelt before the same symbol. A silver crescent moon surrounded by wolves. Elena felt an ache inside her chest. She had seen that symbol before. On Lyra's shoulder, inside the strange vision. Now here. The deeper they walked, the stronger the feeling became. Almost like invisible hands, gently pulling her forward. At last the tunnel opened into a breathtaking chamber. Elena stopped breathing. An enormous underground hall stretched before them. Towering stone pillars disappeared into darkness high above. Ancient banners still hung from cracked walls, though time had faded their colors. At the far end stood a magnificent stone throne carved entirely from white marble. Dust covered everything. No footsteps, no signs of life, only silence. It looked less like a forgotten castle, and more like a kingdom waiting for someone to return. Cale slowly looked around. No records mention this place. Elena walked toward the throne, almost without thinking. Every step felt strangely familiar. She reached the wide stone platform, then placed one trembling hand upon the armrest. The moment her skin touched the cold marble, another vision crashed into her mind. She saw herself, not as the woman she had become, as a tiny child wrapped inside royal blankets. She saw Magnus carrying her through these very halls while warriors fought behind them. A beautiful woman kissed her forehead with tears in her eyes. "Live, my daughter. One day you will come home." The woman's voice echoed through Elena's soul. Then everything shattered into darkness. Elena fell to her knees. Cale rushed forward. "Elena!" She opened her eyes slowly. Tears rolled silently down her face. "I have been here before." Cale looked at her in disbelief. "That is impossible." She shook her head. "No. Someone carried me through these halls when I was a baby. Magnus. He saved me." Before Cale could answer, another voice echoed through the chamber. "At last. You remember." Both of them turned. Magnus stood at the entrance, supported by his old staff. His gray cloak was torn, blood stained one shoulder. Yet somehow he was still alive. Elena hurried toward him. "You survived." The old man smiled weakly. "Barely. The wolves bought me enough time." She looked behind him. "Where are they?" His smile faded. "Some never returned." The words hurt more than Elena expected. Those wolves had protected her without asking for anything. Now many had died because of her. Magnus gently rested one hand upon her shoulder. "Do not carry guilt that belongs to evil people. They chose to protect you because they know who you truly are." Elena looked directly into his eyes. "Then tell me, who am I?" The old man remained silent for several long moments. Finally he walked toward the ancient throne. 24 years ago this kingdom had another royal family. Not House Draven, the House of Ashmore. Guardians chosen by the moon goddess herself. Unlike ordinary alphas, they did not rule wolves through fear. They ruled through trust. Every wolf was born recognizing their blood. No command was needed. No punishment. Only presence. Magnus turned toward Elena. You are Elena Ashmore, the last daughter of that royal bloodline, the true heir to the moon throne. Silence filled the chamber. Cale stared at Elena. His mind refused to accept what he had just heard. Elena whispered the words almost to herself. Ashmore. That has always been my name. Magnus nodded. Because I never changed it. I wanted one piece of your truth to survive. He slowly approached her. The people who murdered your parents believed you died that night. Only 3 people knew you survived. I was one. Another was Beta Rowan. The third has hidden for 24 years. Cale frowned. Rowan knew. Magnus nodded again. He swore an oath to protect the secret until the rightful time. Cale felt the ground shift beneath him. His oldest friend had hidden this truth from him for years. Not because of betrayal. Because of duty. Elena looked down at sleeping Lyra. Then who is she? Magnus gently uncovered the child's shoulder, revealing the silver birthmark. She is your cousin, the last child born from your family. Her parents were murdered only weeks ago before anyone discovered her existence. She is the final royal heir after you. Elena wrapped the blanket around the child once more. No one will ever hurt her again. Magnus smiled sadly. That promise may soon be tested. He reached inside his cloak and removed a small wooden chest. Its lock had already been broken. Inside rested dozens of ancient scrolls covered with royal seals. Your family kept records of every royal birth, every law, every prophecy. One scroll belonged only to the guardian bloodline. Elena carefully opened the oldest scroll. The faded ink remained surprisingly clear. She read only the first few lines before her breathing stopped. When the guardian queen returns, every wolf shall kneel before her, and the false crown shall fall beneath the light of the moon. Cale slowly looked at Elena. Then something extraordinary happened. Without warning, the 3 black wolves, lying near the entrance, quietly stood. One after another they walked toward Elena. They lowered themselves until their heads touched the stone floor. Not out of habit, not because she had asked, because instinct left them no other choice. Cale's own wolf surged forward inside him with overwhelming force. Kneel. The command did not come from Elena. It came from his own soul. For the first time in his life, the Alpha King had to fight the overwhelming urge to bow before the woman he had once rejected. And far away inside the royal palace, Lady Selene stood before a burning fireplace with a smile that no longer hid her cruelty. A frightened messenger dropped to one knee. My queen, we found the hidden castle. Selene's eyes narrowed. Then burn it to the ground. No matter who stands inside it, even if it means destroying the last true queen forever. The words hung in the air long after Magnus finished speaking. The ancient hall felt alive now. It was no longer a forgotten ruin buried beneath the mountain. It had become a place where the past had finally awakened. Elena stood before the white stone throne with Lyra sleeping peacefully in her arms, while 3 great black wolves remained bowed at her feet. Their loyalty had never been taught. It came from something older than memory. Cale watched in silence. His entire life had been built upon one belief, that strength earned obedience. Yet these wolves obeyed no order. They bowed because their souls recognized the woman standing before them. His chest tightened. Every painful memory returned with cruel clarity. The rejection ceremony, the laughter of the nobles, the disappointment in Elena's eyes, the lonely figure walking away without once asking him to change his mind. He had convinced himself he had protected the kingdom. Now he realized he had helped bury its rightful queen. Elena slowly turned toward him. There was no hatred in her face. That hurt even more. Hatred could have been fought. Silence could not. Cale stepped forward until only a few feet separated them. His voice was quieter than it had ever been. I owe you words I should have spoken long ago. Elena looked at him without answering. He lowered his head. I was wrong. I judged you by what the kingdom expected instead of what my own heart knew. I chose fear over truth. I chose pride over my mate. No king should make that choice. The ancient chamber remained silent. Magnus quietly looked away. Even the wolves did not move. Elena finally spoke. Do you remember what you said the day you rejected me? Cale closed his eyes. Every word. She nodded slowly. Then remember something else. After everyone laughed. After the elders turned their backs. After the villagers called me cursed. I walked through the palace gates alone. No one followed me. Not even you. Her calm voice carried more pain than any scream. I buried my old life in that snow. Do not ask me to dig it up again. Cale felt every sentence strike like an unseen blade. He wanted to speak. Nothing worthy came. At last he whispered, I am sorry. Elena gently adjusted the blanket around Lyra. Some wounds survive even after the blood disappears. She walked past him. The conversation was over. Magnus watched Cale carefully. Regret is the beginning of redemption, not the end. You still have a kingdom to save. Before Cale could answer, one of the wolves suddenly lifted its head. A sharp growl rolled across the chamber. Another wolf joined. Then another. Magnus frowned. Someone has entered the outer tunnels. Everyone became alert. Cale immediately drew his sword. The wolves rushed toward the entrance. Heavy footsteps echoed through the darkness beyond the hall. For one tense moment nobody moved. Then Beta Rowan appeared from the shadows. His cloak was torn by branches and snow covered his shoulders. He looked exhausted. The moment he entered, he dropped to one knee before Elena. Not before Cale. Before Elena. My queen. The words echoed through the chamber. Cale stared at his oldest friend. Rowan slowly raised his head. Forgive me. I could not reveal the truth until Magnus gave the signal. It was the last order your father ever gave me. Elena stepped closer. You knew my parents. He nodded. I held you the night you were born. Your mother trusted me with her life. Tears filled Elena's eyes. Tell me about them. Rowan smiled sadly. Your mother laughed often, even during difficult times. Your father believed every wolf deserved justice, whether born alpha or omega. People followed them because they loved them, not because they feared them. Elena listened without speaking. For the first time in her life, someone described the family she had never known. Each sentence filled an empty place inside her heart. Rowan reached inside his cloak. There is something else. He removed a small leather pouch and handed it to her. Inside rested a silver pendant shaped like a crescent moon. The metal had faded with age but remained beautiful. Your mother wore this every day. I have protected it for 24 years. Elena held the pendant carefully. The moment it touched her skin, another memory flashed before her eyes. She saw herself as a little girl reaching toward the necklace, while soft hands lifted her into warm arms. A gentle voice whispered, Never forget who you are. The vision vanished. A single tear slipped down her cheek. She pressed the pendant against her heart. Thank you. Suddenly a loud explosion shook the mountain. Dust rained from the ceiling. The wolves barked furiously. Cale rushed toward the entrance. Fire! Someone had set the outer tunnels ablaze. Smoke poured through the narrow passage. Magnus looked toward the flames. Celine found us faster than I feared. Another explosion echoed. This one closer. Large stones crashed from the ceiling. The ancient castle trembled beneath their feet. Cale turned immediately. There is another exit. Magnus nodded. Follow me. The group hurried through narrow stone corridors, hidden behind the throne room. The passages twisted deep beneath the mountain. Ancient paintings covered the walls. Kings standing beside wolves. Queens carrying children marked by the silver moon. One painting stopped Elena in her tracks. A woman almost identical to her stood surrounded by kneeling wolves. Around her neck rested the very pendant she now wore. Magnus gently touched the painting. Queen Aria, your mother. Elena stared silently. She wished she could stay. There was no time. Smoke spread quickly through the tunnels. The baby stirred inside the blanket. Cale lifted fallen stones blocking the narrow path, while Rowan supported Magnus through the collapsing passages. At last they reached a hidden cave opening high above the valley. Fresh winter air rushed toward them. They stepped outside, just as flames burst from the mountain behind them. The ancient castle disappeared beneath falling rock. Elena watched silently. The only place connected to her childhood had been destroyed. Magnus placed a comforting hand upon her shoulder. A home is never only stone. It lives inside the people who remember. Before anyone could answer, a sharp cry echoed from the cliffs. Everyone looked up. A great white eagle circled above them. Something glittered around one of its legs. The bird descended gracefully before landing on a nearby rock. It stretched one powerful leg toward Elena. A tiny scroll had been tied beneath its feathers. Rowan carefully removed it. His face became pale as he read the message. Cale stepped closer. What is it? Rowan slowly looked up. Northern Pack. Eastern Pack. River Pack. 3 alpha leaders have declared loyalty to Selene. They believe you murdered the Royal Bloodline and kidnapped the child. Elena's eyes widened. She has turned the kingdom against us. Magnus nodded. That was always her plan. Make the truth look like treason. Cale looked toward the distant horizon, where dark clouds gathered above the mountains. Then he made a decision. I will call every alpha to the royal capital. In front of every pack I will admit my mistake. I will tell them who Elena truly is. Rowan hesitated. Many will refuse to believe you. Cale's silver eyes hardened. Then I will make them listen. Before anyone could speak again, another sound broke through the cold mountain air. It was not thunder. It was the distant cry of Lyra. Elena looked down in horror. Her arms were empty. The blanket had slipped open during their escape. The baby was gone. Only the tiny silver pendant she had been wrapped in remained lying in the snow. Somewhere in the chaos of the collapsing tunnels, someone had stolen the last royal child without a single person noticing. For one endless moment no one moved. Elena stared at the empty blanket lying in the snow as if refusing to believe what her eyes were showing her. Only seconds earlier Lyra had been sleeping peacefully against her chest. Now the child had vanished without a sound. The icy wind lifted the edge of the blanket and carried it gently across the frozen ground like a cruel reminder of her failure. No. The word escaped Elena's lips as nothing more than a whisper. Then it became a cry that echoed across the mountains. No. She dropped to her knees and searched the snow with trembling hands as though the baby might somehow still be hiding beneath it. Her fingers dug into the ice until they bled. She called Lyra's name again and again, but only the wind answered. Cale immediately crouched beside the scattered footprints leading away from the cave. His face darkened. Someone had planned this. These are not random tracks. Rowan quickly joined him. The snow around the entrance was covered with the marks of wolves and people from their escape. Yet among the confusion, one trail remained strangely perfect. One pair of light footsteps, barely touching the snow, moving away from the mountain with impossible speed. Magnus closed his tired eyes. They waited for the castle to collapse. They knew panic would blind us. Elena slowly stood. Her tears had stopped. The grief inside her hardened into something colder, something stronger. She looked directly at Cale. We find her, no matter who stands in our way. Cale met her eyes. Together. She did not answer. She simply turned toward the trail and began walking. The wolves followed without hesitation. Within minutes more wolves emerged from the forest. Then more. Black wolves. Gray wolves. Even rare white wolves descended from the snowy cliffs. None had been called. None had received an order. They came because Elena was moving. Cale watched in silent amazement. Every hour their numbers grew. By sunset, more than 100 wolves surrounded the narrow valley. The sight was unlike anything recorded in the history of the packs. Even Rowan whispered softly, "They are answering her blood, not her voice." As darkness covered the mountains, the group reached an abandoned watchtower overlooking 3 frozen valleys. Fresh tracks disappeared there, then vanished completely. Cale searched every inch of the ground. Nothing. Whoever took Lyra knew how to hide. Elena walked inside the ruined tower. Dust covered everything. Broken furniture lay scattered across the floor. At first glance it seemed abandoned. Then she noticed a faint smell. Milk. Fresh milk. Someone had cared for a child here only hours earlier. She followed the scent toward a cracked stone wall. Behind a loose block rested a tiny wool toy shaped like a wolf. Lyra's toy. Elena held it tightly. She was here. Magnus carefully examined the floor. Look! Near the wall, faint scratches formed another strange symbol. Not the black fang mark. This symbol looked like 2 wolves standing beneath a crown. Rowan frowned. I have seen this before. Years ago. It belonged to the Iron Crescent pack. Cale looked up immediately. Impossible. That pack disappeared after refusing to accept the royal throne. Magnus slowly nodded. Not disappeared. Hidden. Elena looked from one face to another. Then they have Lyra. Cale's expression became grim. If the Iron Crescent joins Selene, then this kingdom is already standing on the edge of civil war. Before anyone could speak, another wolf rushed into the tower. His breathing was heavy. His shoulder carried fresh claw wounds. The great animal stopped before Elena, then lowered his head. Slowly he pushed something toward her with his nose. A torn piece of white fabric. Elena recognized it instantly. Part of Lyra's blanket. The wolf looked toward the western mountains, then turned and ran. He wanted them to follow. They rode through the entire night. The wolves never slowed. Neither did Elena. Her exhaustion disappeared beneath determination. Every heartbeat repeated the same promise. Hold on, Lyra. I am coming. As dawn painted the mountains silver, they reached a hidden valley unlike any Elena had ever seen. Hundreds of wolves stood waiting across the snow. Massive, silent, watching. At first Elena thought they would attack. Instead, the oldest wolf slowly walked forward. His muzzle had turned gray with age. A long scar crossed one blind eye. He stopped only a few feet away. Then, without hesitation, he lowered himself until his head touched the snow. One after another, every wolf in the valley followed. Hundreds of wolves bowed together. The earth itself seemed to grow quiet. Cale felt the same powerful force inside him once again. His wolf pushed forward with overwhelming strength. Bow. Not from fear. From recognition. Cale fought the instinct with every ounce of will he possessed. He remained standing. Barely. Magnus smiled softly. The guardian bloodline has fully awakened. The wolves no longer question who she is. Elena looked around in disbelief. Why are they doing this? The old wolf suddenly let out a deep howl. Others answered. Then another. Soon the entire valley echoed with voices rising toward the morning sky. The sound carried across mountains and forests beyond sight. Magnus listened carefully. They are sending a message. To every wolf in the kingdom. The true queen has returned. Hours later that message reached villages, border patrols, hidden packs, even the royal capital. Wolves everywhere lifted their heads at exactly the same moment. Some abandoned their hunts. Some left palace gates. Others broke free from chains. Without understanding why, they all looked toward the western mountains. Lady Selene stood upon the palace balcony when the first howl reached the capital. Another followed, then dozens more. Her smile disappeared. She turned sharply toward one of her commanders. Find the source. Now. The frightened commander hurried away. Selene's hands tightened around the stone railing. She had spent 24 years erasing every trace of the Ashmore bloodline. Now the wolves themselves were undoing her lies. Back in the hidden valley, the old wolf rose to his feet. He walked toward Elena carrying something wrapped inside thick leather. He gently placed it before her. Inside rested an ancient sword unlike any Cale had ever seen. Its silver blade reflected the morning light. A crescent moon had been forged into the guard. The leather grip carried the same royal mark as Elena's pendant. Magnus bowed his head. The sword of Queen Aria. Your mother's blade. No one has touched it since the night she died. Elena slowly reached for the weapon. The moment her fingers closed around the grip, the blade shimmered beneath the sunlight. Not with magic, with perfect polished steel that looked untouched by time. She lifted it easily, though it should have been too heavy. It felt as though it had always belonged in her hands. The old wolves around her released another low howl. Rowan smiled for the first time in many days. Even the sword remembers. Cale watched her carefully. He no longer saw the frightened woman living alone inside a forest cabin. He saw someone standing taller than any throne. Someone carrying quiet strength that no title could create. At last he understood what true leadership looked like. Not power over others. Hope for others. Suddenly a young scout came running across the valley. His face was pale, his breathing uneven. He dropped to one knee before Cale. Alpha, the capital has fallen into chaos. Selene has declared herself the only rightful queen. She claims you betrayed the kingdom. She has ordered every pack to hunt Elena on sight. The scout swallowed hard before speaking again. Then came the words that froze every heart in the valley. She also announced that tomorrow at sunrise she will execute the royal baby before the entire kingdom unless the woman calling herself Elena Ashmore surrenders at the palace gates. Silence swept across the valley. No wolf howled. No warrior spoke. The words settled over everyone like a storm that had finally arrived. Tomorrow at sunrise, Lyra would die. Elena did not cry. She did not scream. She simply looked toward the distant mountains where the royal capital stood beyond endless forests and frozen rivers. The morning light reflected from the blade in her hand. Her face remained calm, but inside her heart something had changed forever. The frightened woman who had once accepted every insult was gone. Only a queen remained. She slowly raised her eyes toward every warrior gathered in the valley. No child dies for my silence. Her quiet voice carried farther than any shout. If Selene wants me, she will have me, but she will answer for every innocent life she has stolen. Hundreds of wolves answered with one powerful howl that rolled across the mountains like thunder. Chaol stepped beside her. You will not walk into that palace alone. Elena looked at him. You owe this kingdom the truth. He nodded without hesitation. Then I will give it the truth before the sun rises. The army moved before noon. Not because someone ordered them. Because everyone chose to follow. Wolves filled the forest. Warriors marched beside them. Ordinary villagers, who had once hidden behind fear, now joined the growing procession after hearing whispers that the lost queen had returned. Every mile added more people. Every village added more hope. By nightfall, thousands crossed the frozen plains together beneath a sky full of stars. Far ahead, the royal capital stood surrounded by towering stone walls. Fire burned from every watchtower. Lady Selene had prepared for war. Inside the palace, Selene stood before the great throne, wearing a crown she had never earned. Around her stood the alphas who still believed her lies. The royal hall echoed with uneasy whispers. Some looked toward the small wooden cradle placed beside the throne. Inside it slept Lyra. Her tiny hands rested peacefully beneath a white blanket. She knew nothing of crowns, nothing of betrayal, nothing of the blood waiting to be spilled around her. Selene smiled at the gathered leaders. Tomorrow the traitor will come. She loves this child too much to stay hidden. When she kneels before us, every pack will witness justice. One elderly alpha slowly stood. And if she does not come, Selene answered without emotion, then the child dies. The hall became painfully quiet. Even those who supported Selene lowered their eyes. Outside the city gates, the great army stopped beneath the darkness. Campfires remained unlit. No songs filled the cold air, only determination. Chaol gathered the leaders around a rough wooden table covered with maps. There is one chance to avoid thousands of deaths. He looked directly at Elena. Let me enter first. Let me speak before the council. If even half the alphas believe me, the battle may never begin. Elena remained silent. Finally she nodded. One chance. No more. Before dawn, Chaol entered the city alone. His black cloak hid his face as he crossed familiar streets, now filled with frightened citizens. Rumors traveled faster than footsteps. Some whispered that the Alpha King had betrayed the throne. Others claimed the lost queen commanded wolves like the moon goddess herself. Fear had replaced certainty. Inside the palace, Chaol walked directly into the council chamber. Every alpha turned toward him. Selene smiled slowly. My king, you finally returned. Chaol removed his cloak. His silver eyes swept across every leader in the room. I did not return to stand beside a murderer. The room exploded with shocked voices. Selene's smile disappeared. Choose your next words carefully. Chaol took another step forward. 24 years ago, the Ashmore family was betrayed. The rightful queen was stolen from this kingdom. 6 months ago, I rejected my true mate because I believe lies carefully planted for years. His voice grew stronger. The woman you call a traitor is Elena Ashmore, the last true heir to the moon throne. Several alphas immediately stood. Impossible. Lies. Where is your proof? Before Chaol could answer, the great wooden doors burst open. A cold wind swept through the hall. Every torch flickered. Elena walked inside. She wore the same simple green dress beneath her winter cloak. No golden crown. No royal jewels. Only the silver pendant around her neck and the ancient sword resting quietly in her hand. Behind her came Rowan, Magnus, then wolves. Dozens of enormous wolves entered the royal hall without growling, without attacking. The gathered nobles stumbled backward in fear. Elena stopped in the center of the chamber. She looked at every face that had once turned away from her. Many recognized the woman they had mocked after Chaol rejected her. None recognized the queen standing before them now. Selene laughed. A clever performance. Nothing more. She raised one elegant hand. Archers, kill the wolves. No arrow flew. The soldiers remained frozen. Their hands trembled. None could bring themselves to release the strings. One young guard slowly lowered his bow. Then another. Soon every weapon pointed toward the floor. Selene's eyes widened with disbelief. What are you doing? The captain stepped forward. Forgive me, my queen. They are not attacking. Neither should we. Anger twisted Celine's face. Cowards. She grabbed a spear from one of the guards and hurled it herself. The weapon flew straight toward Elena. Before anyone could move, one black wolf leaped through the air. The spear struck his chest. The great animal crashed to the marble floor. Blood spread across the white stone. The wolf looked once toward Elena. His tail moved gently. Then he became still. The hall fell silent. Elena slowly walked toward the fallen wolf. She knelt beside him. Her trembling fingers brushed through his dark fur. You protected me from the first day we met. She closed his eyes with gentle hands. Then she stood again. When she looked at Celine, the sorrow inside her had become unbreakable resolve. You have taken enough. She walked forward. No fear remained. Every step echoed through the hall. Celine backed away for the first time. Guards, stop her. No one moved. The alphas watched silently. Many had begun noticing the wolves. Not one obeyed Kale. Every wolf remained focused only on Elena. Even Kale himself had stepped behind her. Not beside her. Behind her. The oldest alpha in the room slowly approached. His beard reached the middle of his chest. His hands trembled with age. He stopped before Elena. Then, without speaking, he lowered himself onto one knee. I knew your mother. She ruled with kindness. Today I see her again. Another alpha knelt. Then another. Within moments, leaders from every corner of the kingdom lowered themselves before Elena. The sound of armor touching stone echoed throughout the hall. Only Celine remained standing, her face twisted with hatred. You fools! She reached beneath her cloak and pulled out a small silver knife. In one swift movement, she grabbed Lyra from the cradle and held the blade against the baby's tiny neck. No one comes closer, or the child dies now. Every heart in the hall stopped. Elena froze. Lyra began to cry. Soft, frightened cries that echoed through the silent throne room. Celine smiled wildly. You want your future queen. Then watch her die first. Before anyone could move, a voice suddenly echoed from the highest balcony above the throne. No, not today. Every head lifted. A hooded figure stepped into the light, slowly removing the cloak from his face. Magnus stared in complete disbelief. His walking staff slipped from his hand. His voice shook with emotion. After all these years, you are alive. Every face in the royal hall turned toward the highest balcony. The hooded stranger stepped into the light with slow, steady confidence. He was a man in his late 50s with silver streaks running through dark hair and deep scars crossing one side of his face. His cloak carried no royal colors, yet there was something unmistakably noble in the way he stood. Magnus stared at him with tears filling his tired eyes. I watched you fall. The man smiled sadly. That is exactly what Celine wanted everyone to believe. He descended the long stone staircase while every eye followed him. No guard dared stop him. Even Celine looked shaken for the first time since anyone had known her. You should be dead, she whispered. The man stopped only a few steps from Elena. Then he slowly lowered himself onto one knee. My queen, forgive me for arriving 24 years too late. Elena looked at him in confusion. Who are you? He lifted his eyes toward her. My name is Cedric Ashmore. I was your father's younger brother. Your uncle. The words echoed through the hall like thunder. A gasp spread through the gathered alphas. Magnus closed his eyes with relief. You survived. Cedric nodded. Barely. The night your parents died, I was thrown from the northern cliffs by Celine's assassins. They believed the river below would finish what their blades began. Instead, I survived with broken bones and disappeared beyond the eastern sea. 4 years I searched for proof that someone from our family had escaped. His eyes rested gently on Elena. I never stopped looking for you. Elena felt the last empty place inside her heart finally begin to heal. Without speaking, she stepped forward and embraced him. Cedric wrapped his arms around her like a father protecting a child. Your mother would be proud of the woman you became. Not because you carry a crown. Because you never allowed cruelty to destroy your kindness. Across the hall, Celine's breathing became uneven. Enough. She tightened the knife against Lyra's neck. Every lie ends today. Cedric slowly faced her. No. Your lies end today. He reached inside his cloak and removed a weathered leather book wrapped in faded cloth. Magnus immediately recognized it. The royal record. Cedric nodded. The original. not the copy Celine burned. Every birth, every oath, every royal seal survived, because I carried it with me for 24 years. He opened the book before the council. One by one ancient documents appeared. The birth record of Elena Ashmore, the royal seal of Queen Aria, the final testimony signed by dying palace guards who had witnessed Celine leading the assassins into the palace. Every page shattered another lie. Every page stripped away Celine's power. The alphas looked at one another in stunned silence. One by one they turned away from the false queen. Celine realized the truth before anyone spoke. She had lost. Hatred twisted across her face. If I cannot have his kingdom, then no one will. She raised the knife. Before the blade could move, a blur of black fur crossed the throne room. Chaol's royal wolf. The same wolf that had abandoned the palace months ago. He struck Celine with enough force to send the knife spinning across the marble floor. Lyra slipped from Celine's arms. The entire hall gasped. Elena dropped her sword and ran. Time itself seemed to slow. The tiny child fell through the air toward the stone floor. Before anyone else could move, Elena threw herself forward. She caught Lyra against her chest, only a heartbeat before reaching the ground. She curled around the baby as they rolled across the marble together. Silence. Then Lyra began crying. Strong, healthy, alive. Relief swept through the hall. Chaol helped Elena to her feet. Their eyes met. No words were needed. They had both chosen the child before themselves. Across the chamber, Celine struggled to stand. She reached for another hidden blade. This time dozens of wolves surrounded her. They did not attack. They simply stood between her and everyone else. She looked around desperately. No soldiers came. No alphas answered. She was alone. Elena slowly approached her. The throne room became so quiet that every footstep echoed. Celine laughed bitterly. Go on. Kill me. Become the monster I always said you would be. Elena looked into the eyes of the woman who had stolen her family, destroyed her childhood, turned an entire kingdom against her. Then she gently shook her head. No. You took enough lives already. I will not give you another. She turned toward the council. Let every pack judge her crimes together. Let justice replace revenge. The oldest alpha stood. That is how the Ashmore family always ruled. With justice, not hatred. One by one, every alpha raised a hand in agreement. Celine fell to her knees, not because anyone forced her, because there was nowhere left to run. As the palace guards led her away, the first rays of sunrise entered the great hall. Golden light poured through the tall windows and covered the ancient throne. Magnus stepped forward, carrying a small wooden chest. He carefully opened it. Inside rested the moon crown. Simple, beautiful, forged from silver rather than gold. No jewels, only the symbol of the crescent moon resting above two wolves. Magnus looked toward Elena. This crown has waited for only one person. Elena hesitated. I never wanted a throne. Cedric smiled. That is exactly why you deserve it. Slowly Elena knelt. Magnus placed the crown upon her head. The moment it settled into place, every wolf inside the palace lowered itself until its head touched the floor. Outside, thousands more wolves answered. The sound of their united howl rolled across the kingdom like the beginning of a new age. Even Chaol could no longer resist what his own soul had accepted. He stepped forward, then lowered himself onto one knee before Elena. Not because she had been his mate, not because she was queen, because she had earned every heart in the kingdom. Elena looked at him quietly. Please stand. A king should never remain on his knees forever. Chaol rose slowly. There was hope in his eyes. Not expectation. Hope. Months passed. The kingdom slowly healed. Villages damaged by war were rebuilt. The old laws that separated wolves by birth were abolished. Orphans found homes. The weak found protection. The forests became peaceful once again. Lyra grew surrounded by love instead of fear. She laughed every time the wolves gathered around her, as though they were simply another part of her family. Chaol never pressured Elena to forgive him. Instead, he proved himself through actions. He rode beside ordinary patrols. He rebuilt homes with his own hands. He listened before giving orders. Little by little, the broken trust between them began to grow again. Not because fate demanded it, because both of them chose it. One quiet evening, Elena stood on the palace balcony, holding Lyra, while watching hundreds of wolves resting peacefully below. Cedric joined her. Your mother once stood in this exact place. She told me that the greatest rulers are remembered not by the wars they win, but by the lives they protect. Elena smiled softly. Then I hope they remember all of us. Cedric looked toward the horizon. They will. At that very moment, Lyra reached up with one tiny hand and touched the silver pendant resting around Elena's neck. A gentle warmth spread through the air. Every wolf in the courtyard lifted its head together. High above them, a single white wolf appeared upon the distant mountain ridge. The animal watched the palace for one silent moment before disappearing into the morning mist. Magnus smiled, as though he understood something no one else did. The guardian bloodline had never truly ended. It had only been waiting for the right queen to bring the kingdom home again.